My wife gets a couples counselor after getting diagnosed with severe depression, and I think it's for our good until she tries to convince me to allow her to see other people while I stay loyal because she deserves to explore both her married life and single life at the same time. When I refuse, she insults me in front of the entire family for being conservative, insecure and possessive, so I do this. About 5 months ago my wife Sarah was formally diagnosed with severe depression. It wasn't a very shocking revelation to me, as I had suspected for a while that my partner was not really doing mentally well this year. She seemed to be deeply mourning over the loss of both her ex-boyfriend and her best friend. Both of these people had once meant a lot to her and she had been incredibly close to them. And for context, before Sarah and I started ever dating, she and her ex were in a serious relationship for a very long time. Then out of nowhere, he cheated on her with her best friend, someone she considered like a sister. This betrayal cut her deeply, marking the end of 2 of her most important relationships at once. After that, Sarah stayed single for a long time as she was afraid to trust anyone else. She needed time to deal with the pain and sort through her emotions. By the time I met her, she seemed to have made peace with both of it and was trying to move on. Still, the hurt from being betrayed was still there, making her a bit cautious. We dated for 4 wonderful years where we went through our ups and downs before deciding to finally get married. We had a beautiful wedding surrounded by friends, family and the people who mattered most to us. The day was filled with so much joy and love. I have to say that initially, Sarah was an incredible partner, supportive, kind, understanding, and deeply caring. Marriage brought us even closer, and for years we have built a life together that felt strong and promising. But then earlier this year, tragedy struck. Sarah's ex-boyfriend and her former best friend died together in a car accident. The news hit her hard. For years she had held on to resentment, but now faced with their deaths she was overwhelmed by grief she hadn't expected. Something inside her seemed to shatter completely. Sarah sometimes shared with me how she wished she'd been able to resolve things with them. She expressed remorse for not having been able to reconcile, to forgive them fully, or at least to speak her piece. Knowing they were gone forever without the chance for closure seemed to weigh heavily on her heart. I reassured her that it was okay to feel this way. After all, they had been an important part of her life, but she started to blame herself for not mending things with them before they passed away. You see, Sarah's best friend had reached out multiple times over the years apologizing and trying to make amends. Yet Sarah couldn't bring herself to forgive her, which I don't blame her for. I mean, it's not every day that your best buddy sleeps with your partner. Even though the apology was there, the pain of the past was something Sarah couldn't just put aside. I would comfort her by repeatedly reminding her that what happened wasn't her fault and that she had every right to protect herself from further hurt. But no amount of reassurance seemed to help her. Instead, Sarah's grief only grew, spiraling into something darker and harder to manage. She would spend hours and hours just lying in bed, often losing entire days watching TV or at times just staring blankly at the wall, a beer in hand. She began skipping work, calling in sick, or just staying home without any explanation. I could see she was sinking deeper into despair, and I tried my best to encourage her to get her out of the house and do things that might help her feel better, even just a little. I suggested small outings or anything that might offer a distraction, but my words seemed to fall on deaf ears. Due to her lack of motivation to go to work, she lost her job, so I became the primary breadwinner. Slowly after this, my wife's behavior started to change in other unsettling ways. Her mood became hard to predict, shifting between being easily irritated and shutting down completely. She grew distant and defensive and would snap at me over the smallest things. On top of not working, she did nothing to help me around the house anymore. As a result, household responsibilities piled up and I found myself carrying the weight of daily life without her support, all the while watching her drift further away. Even then I still loved her, so I thought maybe we could still make it through this. However, things just got worse. Sarah started to pick fights with me if I stayed out too late, whether it was for work or just to unwind with friends on a Friday. I would come back home to see her sitting on the couch waiting for me. She would ask me multiple questions about why I was out so late and who I was spending so much time with. Even if I answered her honestly, she'd hint that she didn't believe me and accuse me of maybe sleeping with my co-workers or friends, saying that's why I was never home. Hearing these baseless accusations from her was both painful and offensive. No matter what I told her to reassure her that I would never cheat on her, she just didn't listen. As a result, we began having intense, exhausting arguments where she demanded that I come straight back home after work, and even on weekends she wanted me to stay home with her as if my time belonged to her alone. I started to feel suffocated, like the space I once had in our marriage was shrinking, replaced by her insecurities and anger. Things escalated when her frustration started spilling over physically. There were 2 alarming instances where she crossed a line I never thought she would. In one of our arguments, she punched the sofa just above my head in a fit of anger, a violent display that left me feeling unsettled and wary. But the real breaking point came when, during another heated moment, she slapped me on the face. My wife was being very controlling. That moment was a clear sign to me that her grief and depression had morphed into something darker and more dangerous. I realized I couldn't stay in the relationship where my safety and well-being was at risk, so I packed my bags ready to leave her and protect myself. Seeing me ready to walk out the door brought her to a state of desperation. She pleaded with me to stay, promising me over and over that she would change herself. I stood firm, telling her that for me to even consider staying, she would need to seek real help. She agreed, saying she would go to a doctor if it meant she had a chance to save our marriage. Reluctantly, I decided to give our relationship one last try, hoping she would actually commit to the help she so clearly needed. It was a difficult decision filled with doubt, but I wanted to believe that the woman I had fallen in love with could still find her way back to herself and to us. This was when Sarah was diagnosed with severe depression. She started taking medication weekly and began meditating to help manage her anger. Eventually, I could see some positive changes slowly emerging. The medication seemed to help stabilize her mood, and she made genuine efforts to be more present and helpful around the house. Little by little I saw glimpses of the person she used to be, the woman I fell in love with, and it gave me hope. She showed more willingness to reconnect, and I felt a bit of relief that maybe with time things could improve for us. However, a major issue remained unresolved: her reluctance to return to work and start earning money. She hasn't held any job since her diagnosis, and this has been a source of ongoing tension between us. I don't mind being the only one bringing in all the money, however, I do want her to at least try. Every time I bring it up, hoping to encourage her to consider something, even part-time work or a role she could do from home, she pushes back, insisting that she feels too low and weak to commit to any job. This disagreement eventually led to both of us yelling at each other. On one hand, I know she has been struggling, but on the other hand, the added financial strain and her refusal to even explore options have left me feeling frustrated and alone in carrying all the responsibilities. Last month, Sarah surprised me by suggesting we see a couples counselor. She shared that with our ongoing relationship issues, she felt we should see someone who could help us communicate more effectively and work through some of our issues. She then went on to say how she had already reached out to a counselor and made an appointment, so all I had to do was show up. I agreed, thinking that this counselor could help us strengthen our relationship and perhaps offer her encouragement and support to take those first steps toward rebuilding her life back to normal. However, I can honestly say that couples counseling has made our relationship worse. During the sessions, Sarah admitted that a big part of her depression comes from the life we've built together. She feels like she hasn't been able to live the way she wanted since being married brought so much responsibility. She also mentioned that she still misses her ex-boyfriend sometimes and wishes her best friend hadn't taken him with her. In fact, after the betrayal from her ex, she never really healed, and she feels like she just missed out on life. The more she shared during the sessions, the more I felt like a bystander in my own marriage. She said that she feels like she rushed into a marriage with me without taking the time to enjoy being single and without exploring what she wanted for herself after her heartbreak from her ex-boyfriend. I was taken aback and reminded her that it was her who had proposed to me and we had dated for a long time before we got married. So how was it that she felt rushed about it? The counselor interrupted me and encouraged my wife to continue to speak her truth even if it hurt my feelings. Over the following sessions, Sarah began to confess to me in front of the counselor that she wanted a redo of her single life. However, since we were already married now, she asked if I would consider allowing her to see other people while I stayed committed to our marriage. I scoffed at her question, hoping it was a joke. However, she argued that she deserved to experience both her single life and married life at the same time, and that it was only fair that she have the opportunity to explore and find herself before it was too late for her. I was appalled by her suggestion and didn't hold back in letting her know just how absurd and hurtful it was. I told her, her demand was outrageous and unacceptable. If she wanted to live like a single woman and explore, I could make that happen by leaving the marriage entirely. I wasn't about to stay in a relationship where I was expected to be loyal, while she was free to act however she pleased with strangers. My words seemed to strike a nerve and Sarah became furious. She shot back, claiming that I could never understand her feelings because, unlike her, I'd been with multiple people before we got together. I calmly reminded her that I'd only had 2 previous relationships before her, both serious, meaningful commitments that simply hadn't worked out. It hurt that she would try to use my past against me, as if my experiences somehow made me less entitled to expect commitment in our marriage. I told her that if she felt so strongly about living a single life, she should have thought about that before we walked down the aisle. I reminded her that I had made sacrifices for our relationship, this year especially. I had been the one holding down our home, supporting her financially and emotionally through her depression, all because I believed in our marriage and in her. But now she was making unreasonable demands. It was as if she wanted the security and stability I provided without honoring the commitment that came with it. I couldn't allow that. I told her firmly that she couldn't have it both ways. She needed to make a choice. It was either a committed life with me or a single life without me. She couldn't keep me in limbo, expecting me to bend to her wishes while she kept one foot out the door. Since that confrontation in front of our counselor, Sarah has been sulking around the house, acting as if I'm the one who's being unreasonable. She's repeatedly tried to convince me that I'm being too harsh and even selfish for refusing to let her have some fun. She keeps insisting that if I truly loved her, I'd be more open-minded and supportive of her desire to explore. Her attempts to guilt me into agreeing make it clear that she still doesn't understand or refuses to understand how disrespectful and unfair her request is. But I'm standing firm. I've tried to be compassionate, understanding and supportive of her through the ups and downs of her depression, but there are boundaries I won't compromise on. I don't believe that being open-minded means sacrificing my own self-respect and the integrity of our marriage. I refuse to let her manipulate me into thinking that I'm the one in the wrong. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing my wife to see other people while we're still married. Update 1. For everyone wondering if Sarah might already be cheating and using this as a way to justify her behavior. I honestly don't think that's the case. My wife barely leaves the house. She's constantly around either watching TV all day or just idling in her own thoughts. Ironically, if she were having an affair, at least I'd have clarity and a straightforward reason to walk away. Yes, it would hurt, but at least I'd know she could move on without me. Instead, I'm left dealing with this painful and confusing situation. As for everyone wondering why Sarah's ex and her best friend's death affected her so much all of a sudden, I am none the wiser. But I am just guessing it might have given her a reality check. These were people she knew well, and maybe losing them so unexpectedly made her spiral. I'm not entirely sure, but I've never really understood why it hit her so hard to make her feel so down about it, or why she thinks destroying our marriage and sleeping around will somehow fix this depression. As one commenter pointed out under my post, maybe Sarah has never really loved me throughout our marriage. Maybe she just saw me as a safety net, someone reliable and loyal after her relationship with her ex, and she liked that. Maybe she still has unresolved feelings for her ex and now regrets not giving things a chance with him. Whatever the case, it's ridiculous that my wife now wants an open relationship, something I never would have expected as I'm deeply committed to monogamy. If she had ever hinted at wanting this kind of arrangement before, I would never have married her in the first place. This sudden shift feels like a complete betrayal of the life and values we built together. The reason I haven't already left her is that I genuinely worry about her mental health. She has been my partner for so long, and for years it really felt like it was just her and me against the world. She was never this mean or selfish. She never raised a hand on me or yelled at me. When she began to change so drastically after the tragic accident involving her ex-boyfriend and best friend, I told myself that it was just a phase and that she would find her way back in time. I wanted to believe that the woman I fell in love with was still there, just buried under all the grief and pain. But now, after everything that's happened, I finally accepted that it's time for me to choose myself. This marriage has clearly come to an end. Update 2. It's been 2 weeks since my last update. I have taken the next step for myself and reached out to a lawyer in private to start the divorce process. Sarah and I own our house together and we have a joint account, but given that she's still unemployed and the financial situation is already strained, I needed to first secure my assets before moving forward with the divorce papers. Once the lawyer told me that everything was finalized, I was preparing myself to break the bad news to her. Then yesterday, Sarah crossed a line I simply couldn't ignore anymore, and I realized I couldn't keep my mouth shut any longer. We were at Sarah's sister's house for a family lunch. Her family is incredibly kind to me and we've always had a good relationship, so I was looking forward to meeting all of them. For context, her family knows we have been having some issues in our marriage, but no one knows the whole story. During lunch, I noticed Sarah was continuously drinking. Now she's been strongly discouraged from drinking because of her ongoing medications for depression, so seeing her with a glass of whiskey immediately raised red flags for me. When I gently tried to talk to her about it, she scoffed, ignored me and went right back to drinking. I felt really disrespected, so I left her to do what she wanted. Later during the meal, as everyone was chatting about their lives, Sarah's mother asked how things were going between us and how my work was going. I mentioned that we had been going to couples counseling and that Sarah still needed to work through her issues. I then continued telling everyone about my work when Sarah interrupted me by making a comment that caught me off guard. She said that her depression could be cured faster if her husband understood what she really wanted in her life. Her mother asked her what she meant by that. This is when Sarah openly declared in front of her entire family that I was the reason why her life was so miserable. Everyone stopped eating and just stared at her in confusion. We could all see that she was drunk by now. Sarah went on to say how I have refused to give her what she wanted and that I am nothing but a conservative, insecure and possessive husband who is making her feel suffocated. I could hardly believe what I was hearing, how she was twisting the narrative and putting the blame solely on me. Her sister immediately asked her why she was talking about me in such a way, and she and I were close, so she looked furious at her sister. The rest of her family sat in stunned silence, clearly shocked by her harsh accusations. I felt humiliated and betrayed sitting there listening to her as she continued explaining to everyone that all he wanted was a small thing from me, but that I refused to give it to her only out of my stubbornness. Hearing this, I snapped. The way she was trying to paint me as the villain in front of her family was so hurtful. I turned to Sarah and demanded to know why she wasn't being honest with her family and giving them the entire truth about what she actually wanted from me. I looked at her family and with all the frustration and pain I'd been holding in, I told her exactly what Sarah had asked of me, how she wanted to explore other relationships, basically sleep around with strangers, while I stayed loyal to her, how she expected me to continue being a supportive husband while she enjoyed her life unburdened. I laid it all out, revealing the truth she had been hiding. Her family was stunned. Her mother asked Sarah if this was all really what she was asking of me, and then her father, who had always been kind to me, scolded her for being so ridiculous and asked her if she had truly lost her mind. Sarah, however, was still trying to justify herself. She insisted that everyone's marriage goes through a stalemate and believed this solution she was proposing would help to solve the issues in our marriage. Sarah justified that this was only temporary, that I should feel lucky that she was even asking me for permission when there were so many women who simply cheated on their husbands without anybody ever finding out. I yelled at her, telling her that I was sick of her acting this way, trying to justify her sick excuses and selfish behavior. It was a breaking point for me. I announced in front of everyone that I was done with her. I couldn't keep fighting for a marriage that she no longer valued. I told her flat out that our marriage was over and that I would be sending her the divorce papers. Her face looked dumbfounded, like she couldn't believe what was happening. She slowly blinked and just stared at my face. I handed her my lawyer's card and told her I would be moving out that very day, and if she wanted to talk to me about the divorce she could contact my lawyer. Her parents, understandably concerned, tried to console me, telling me that Sarah was probably acting this way because of her medication, that she didn't really know what she was saying or doing. They seemed to be looking for a way to excuse her behavior, trying to explain it away as just a temporary lapse caused by her depression and the smoking. But I told them that their daughter was nothing but a loser who had been dragging me down for the past several months with her talk of depression and grief. There was no more waiting, no more hoping things would change. I had given everything I could to this relationship when she had only disrespected me time and time again. This time I was going to put myself first. Sarah tried to meekly argue that I couldn't just walk out of our marriage over something as silly as this and that we needed to go back to counseling to work things out. I laughed bitterly at her suggestion, shaking my head. I told her that she absolutely needed a counselor, but that didn't mean I did. I wasn't crazy or unwell like her. I wasn't the one who was going around making reckless, selfish demands or blaming my partner for my own poor choices. I made it clear that I was not going to waste any more of my time trying to fix a marriage that I no longer wanted to fix. Without saying another word, I walked out of her sister's house and headed straight to our home where I began packing. By the time Sarah finally got home in an Uber, frantically calling out my name, I was already ready to leave. When she arrived, she immediately tried the same old begging tactic again, pleading with me, insisting that we could work through this hiccup in our marriage. She even tried to hold on to my luggage as a way to prevent me from walking out. But I informed her that if she stopped me from leaving, then I would call 911 on her and make our divorce process even more difficult for her. I asked her firmly to not stop me from walking out with my things, and begrudgingly she let me. I then quickly packed up my stuff and left to stay at a motel. Update 3. Thank you everyone for your comments. I feel much better after reading them. Ever since that day I'm currently living out of a motel. Sarah has been sending me multiple voicemails. One moment she's accusing me of being heartless, telling me I'm ruining everything, and the next she's apologizing for her behavior, expressing how sorry she is for what she's done. It's been a constant emotional roller coaster, and it's clear to me now that she's trying to manipulate the situation, playing on my emotions to get me to reconsider. But at this point I'm not giving in. Her words don't change the fact that I made a decision based on the person she's become, and I'm not going back to the way things were. I've heard enough excuses and false promises. I need to focus on moving forward and healing from everything that's happened. To clear up any confusion once and for all, I'm not leaving my ex because of her depression. I have a huge amount of respect for people going through mental health conditions. Depression is a serious struggle and I do not want to minimize it. However, when it comes to my relationship with my ex, I am just exhausted because of her lack of accountability. She has constantly used her depression as an excuse to demand whatever she wants from me. This is not fair. I've given more than enough of myself to try and help her, but there comes a point where no single person can carry all this weight alone. Since leaving her, I have felt much better. I've been able to focus on myself, and being away from her has lessened my anxiety also. It's heartbreaking to break my marriage, but I have to walk away for my own mental and emotional health. Update 4. It's been 5 months since my last update. I didn't update anything earlier as nothing was finalized until this month. Sarah and I are officially divorced and I can finally say I'm a free man. Sarah and I split the proceeds from the sale of our house equally. Thankfully, we didn't have any major liabilities or children, so there were no alimony payments involved. This day didn't come easily. There were countless moments when Sarah and her family tried everything they could to change my mind, to convince me to stay, to believe that things could somehow go back to normal. Her mother, for example, came to see me several times after I had moved out. She was on her daughter's side during the divorce proceedings and was constantly trying to guilt me into staying with Sarah. She kept saying that she needed a supportive partner like me and that it was my duty to stay because of our marriage vows. At first, I tried to be polite and reason with her, but as she kept coming back, I became more frustrated with her approach. Finally, during one of her visits, I decided to be honest with her and I told her that Sarah had once slapped me in anger and that I should have left her long before then. I asked her if her own husband had ever done that, would she have stayed? I told her that despite everything I had stayed, even though Sarah didn't deserve my forgiveness. She was completely shocked by what I said, and after that, she never came to bother me again. During the divorce proceedings, I have noticed that Sarah has gone even deeper into her depression, and honestly, she looks worse than she did before. I hope her family gets her the right help. Sarah's sister is the only one who believes I did the right thing by leaving her sister. She and I have continued to remain friends. Currently, I finally moved into a place of my own. Honestly, as a newly divorced man, it feels so liberating to be freed of my ex. I'm proud of myself for trusting my instincts and choosing to leave a toxic relationship before things could have spiraled any further. Now I wake up when I want with no one to answer to. I can focus on my career without distractions, and I'm able to spend time with my co-workers and friends guilt-free. I come and go as I please, and it's a feeling I haven't had in a long time. For the first time in a while, I feel like I'm truly living for myself again without the weight of someone else's sadness and demands dragging me down. And that for me is worth everything.